After appearances, let's start with our guardian ad litem. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Scott Smith. I'm the guardian ad litem.
And for the department?
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Saja Thomas, on behalf of the department.
Jason Macy, CPS, the maltreatment and care unit.
All right. All right. Any other representatives from the department today?
Yes, Michael Pascarella. I'm Jason's supervisor with the CPS Maltreatment and Care Unit via Zoom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Berger.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ariel Berger here on behalf of Mother Lori Neffler.
Thank you. And Ms. Neffler, if you could introduce yourself and Mr. Neffler one more time, please.
My name is Lori Neffler.
And then
This is my husband. I'm sorry.
Yep. My name is Jeremy Neffler, and I'm Lori's husband.
Thank you. All right, Deputy Ames, if you could swear in Ms. Lori Neffler. Right, Ms. Neffler, we just have some preliminary questions for you to make sure that you're fully prepared for today's hearing. I know Ms. Ariel let us know that she talked with you beforehand, which is great, but I still need to go through a couple of questions with you. Do you, for example, have a copy of the petition and those allegations that accompany it?
I do.
Okay, very good. And you have the right to have me read each and every paragraph of that to you on the record unless you waive it. Would you like me to read it, or would you like to waive the reading of the petition?
Miss Berger and I discussed waiving the reading.
Is that what you'd like to do?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, very good. Do you have any reason to believe that you or any of the children would be or are members or eligible for membership in a Native American tribe or band?
No, ma'am.
Great. Well, you have certainly the right to have an attorney, and Ms. Berger is here for that purpose. If you choose to secure your own attorney, that person will have to reach out to Ms. Berger to make sure that they have all of the information they need, but she'll be here for this and all hearings moving forward for that purpose. You also have the right to admit or deny all of the allegations in the petition today and make a statement of explanation. You have a right to seek placement of the child or children during this particular hearing. And I'm sure you've talked with Ms. Berger about those things, and I'll go to her to inquire on those pieces. Finally, do you know if this child or any of the other children are subject to any other court? Like, is there a child custody action, visitation support, a guardianship in any other court?
Not for any of the children named in the petition, no.
All right, thank you. Ms. Berger, do you know how your client would like to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. We're requesting a bench trial.
Very good. So for purposes of today's preliminary hearing, of course, you do have the right to have the probable cause finding for purposes of authorization. You can waive that, or I would welcome testimony to determine whether or not that's appropriate for authorization of the petition today. Ms. Berger, do you know how you'd like to proceed on that point?
Your Honor, we would like the worker to put testimony on for the proofs.
Well, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Judge. Excuse me, if Mr. Macy can please be sworn in.
Mr. Macy, come on up for a witness stand. All right, so this is for purposes of determining whether or not there's enough to authorize the petition and let the case move forward. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Macy, can you briefly explain how you are involved in this matter?
Excuse me. I was assigned the CPS investigation on April 30th.
And as the investigator, what steps did you take to learn about the incidents that were or the alleged incidents that are included in the petition?
I received notice from our intake coordinator from our centralized intake with the referral that included the reported allegations. And I made contact with the Jonesville Police Department, as it was Mundell at the police department at the time of intake.
And were you able to interview the child and or other family members?
Yes,
And were you able to discuss the allegations with law enforcement?
yes.
Were there any, based on your discussion with law enforcement and your discussion with the subject minor of the allegations, what did you determine? As far as,
With my interview with,
If you could try to just use initials,
Oh,
because we
sorry.
are on YouTube this morning.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Or oldest child, or however you want
All
to
right,
avoid that.
child victim?
Hmm?
Child victim?
the oldest
I'll do-
child,
I'll
I
do
think
my
is
best.
most appropriate
Do
here.
my best, Your Honor.
Thank you.
My initial contact with law enforcement, they had reported to me that they had initially completed, or that morning completed their own forensic interview with the child. At which point I completed my own forensic interview with the child, and he had disclosed to me details of abuse, which were consistent with his interview with law enforcement.
Are those allegations that you have included in your petition?
Yes,
In the petition, it also indicates that you were able to speak with Ms. Knepfler and Mr. Knepfler. And based on those conversations, were the allegations used confirmed through them?
I'm sorry.
When you spoke with Mr. and Mrs. Knepfler, were there, did they confirm any allegations was used?
No, they denied the allegations and the disclosure for the child.
And in your opinion, do you believe that there's a substantial risk of harm to the children's life, physical health, and mental well-being if they remain with Ms. Knepfler in her care and custody?
Yes.
And one of the things that stands out in this particular case is that there's only one child who is named as an alleged victim, and there are 3 other children. Can you briefly explain why the 3 other children are included in the petition?
Through investigations with CPS, and when we find that there's confirmation of the use of a child in the home, through that, it becomes what we call a threat harm to the other children. There were no reported concerns directly towards those other 3 children. But like I said, through our policies and laws, that if there is confirmation of such child, it presents a threat of harm to the others.
Thank you for clarifying that. And currently, is there a non-respondent parent or relative, kin that the children can reside with outside of mother's care and custody?
Yes, the father, Jeremy.
Okay, and what is the current living arrangement for all these children?
Current living arrangement, the primary child and
The oldest child?
the oldest child is currently residing with a family friend outside the home that the father just made arrangements for. The other 3 boys are with the father in the family home. And the mother is currently living with her voluntarily, she's outside the home with a relative.
This is a little different because there's another court that kind of jumped in
Right.
before us, but is there any, typically when there's a request for termination of parental rights and initial disposition, there's a request to suspend parenting time. What is the status of parenting time for Ms. Knepfler?
Through the initial preliminary hearing, the courts opted to allow her to have supervised contact with her 3 other children, no contact with the oldest.
As it relates to the allegations of, I'm just gonna, I know that it's very uncomfortable to state on the record, especially when we're on YouTube, but if for purposes of the court determining if there's probable cause to authorize this petition, can you briefly go through some of the elements that were consistent in the interview with law enforcement and in your interview with the child?
The disclosure through the two interviews that, like we said, were consistent. The child disclosed that on a particular time, approximately a year ago, I think it was a year ago around Christmas time, that there were multiple incidents, that encounters with his now adopted mother. As far as, would you like me to go into more detail? I'm not sure how much you want.
I think that it would be helpful to generalize some of those allegations. So whether, and I know that they are in the petition,
Right.
so if you want to kind of go through the ones that were consistent.
The child disclosed on one date that he had encountered in two other occasions that he described in detail with his mother.
And with your conversations with Ms. Knepfler, was she able to confirm whether the circumstances surrounding the child's disclosures were accurate?
The circumstances, as far as the times and places that he described, she did confirm that she was present with him at those situations and times that he reported.
And thank you. I know it's a really
No,
again,
I'm trying to, like you said, yes, he reported incidents in the home at a specific time during a power outage. She confirmed that she was in that room, in that place with him at that time. He reported another time that they were in the van at a specific location, just the two of them. She did confirm that they were together in the van at that location, just the two.
And is there any reason for you to not believe this child?
No.
Is there anything else that you would like to state for the record for the court to determine whether there's enough to continue authorizing this petition?
Not that I can think of. Like I said, his disclosure was specific, detailed, consistent, and like you asked, I can't think of a reason to not believe the child.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination, Ms. Berger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Macy, were these forensic interviews recorded in any way?
I believe the one with law enforcement was, but I wasn't there for it. Mine was not.
Okay. And are you aware of this child's background through the system in foster care?
Somewhat.
Okay. And are you aware of any of his prior trauma?
Not in detail.
Okay. Is it possible that he's been abused in the past?
Yes, it's possible.
Do you know how he came into care?
Yes.
And how is that?
Well, which came into care
First
with his current parent, the first time, or his current parents?
Let's start at the beginning.
The first time he came into care? No, I have no idea.
Okay. And do you know how he came into the care of these individuals?
His current parents, yes.
And how is that?
My understanding is they took him in. His father worked with him through probation, I guess, to be vague.
Please just tell me what's
Okay.
happening.
The father works at the juvenile youth home in Hillsdale County. The child was placed there at one point, about probably a couple times. And his previous adopted father didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. And his current father took him in because he needed a home. And then ultimately ended up taking in his biological brother as well, who was in the same situation.
So this individual where the children were residing prior, was this an adopted placement?
Yes.
Okay. And did the adoption fail?
Yes.
Okay. Did the child go back formally into foster care?
I don't believe so. I think it was avoided as far as him being in the system through foster care. I think there was an outside agency that did the adoption with his current parents.
Okay. Has this child had a trauma assessment?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is that a plan?
I would think it would be.
Okay. Did you receive any other verification of his allegations?
Verification?
Mhm.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Could anybody
as far as
else,
the allegations being reported or someone confirming his disclosure?
Both.
There was no one to confirm the child's disclosure of abuse. And this was when it came to our centralized intake, that was the first time that he had reported it to anybody.
Okay. And were the other children interviewed?
Yes.
And were they consistent? Did they corroborate his allegations?
None of the other children disclosed any information of abuse.
Did they witness any of the things the oldest child is alleging?
No.
Would they have been in the home or around when any of these things occurred?
Two of the children would have been in the home at the time these incidents occurred.
Okay. And how old are those children?
13 and 9.
Have you explored any other avenues as to why a child would make disclosures like this?
No.
Do you plan to?
No.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Questions from our guardian ad litem?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no questions of this witness.
Redirect?
Just a little, I think, you and I have had conversations, correct?
Correct.
And for the court's sake of knowledge, are these parents foster care parents? Are they licensed foster care parents?
Yes.
And are there other children that are not subject to petition living in the home?
Yes.
Okay. And is there concern that if Ms. Seffler went back to the home, that those children would then have to be removed based on foster care licensing requirements?
Yes.
With law enforcement, have you been in contact with them?
Yes.
Do they, based on the information that you have from law enforcement, do they intend to file any criminal charges against Ms. Seffler?
Yes.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, would those include any felony counts?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have concerns about the current parenting time happening?
We have concerns moving forward with them based on the pending charges, which are unresolved at this time. If those were to go through and mom is charged criminally, then there would be concerns of there being any parenting time. Currently, that's not, like I said, the criminal charges are still pending or unresolved, so we don't.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions, Judge. Thank you.
Any recross, Ms. Berger?
None, Your Honor.
Any recross from our guardian ad litem?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Macy. You may return to your seat. I just would like to confirm, and maybe we can go back to Ms. Lori Neffler for a moment. The two oldest children, have they been legally adopted by you and Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the younger two children, are they were they born during your marriage with Jeremy?
Yes, our oldest son was actually born prior to us being married.
Okay. When were you married?
2011.
Thank you. So have you established legal parentage for the third child that was born prior to the marriage? Like an affidavit of parentage or any kind of court proceedings or anything?
We have 2 biological children, 2 adopted children.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on, sorry, one at a time. And I'm not saying that I question your biological link to the children. But for legal purposes, establishing a legal relationship with the child is part of what I have to make sure is done during this stage of the hearing. So that's the reason I'm asking these questions. I appreciate your responses.
Are you asking like if he's on the birth certificate? I guess.
Well, unfortunately, the birth certificate,
I don't know.
well, if he's on an affidavit of parentage, that would be sufficient. But that's different than a birth certificate. But that's okay. We can send our representative out to verify that from the department to look at that piece. All right, Deputy Ames, would you swear in Mr. Jeremy Neffler? Thank you. All right, Mr. Neffler, are you, do you have any reason to believe that you or any of the children named in this petition have any Native American heritage or would be eligible for membership in any Native American tribe or band?
No.
Okay, thank you. And do you know if you're on a document called an affidavit of parentage?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any questions based on my questions, counselors?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else you'd like us to hear from, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger?
No, at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Smith?
I have no witnesses, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, comments then in closing?
Thank you, Judge. Based on Mr. Macy's testimony today, we are asking the court to continue the authorization of this petition. The allegations are very serious, and we do understand that at this point we are still in the fact-finding phase, and maybe more information will come to light through discovery. But at this time, given the child's disclosures that are seemingly credible and consistent between law enforcement's interview and Mr. Macy's interview, we are asking the court to authorize the petition and as relates to, and make the findings that it would be contrary to the welfare of the children if Ms. Neffler was in the home. Based on my understanding from everything, both parents are cooperative with the department, and I'm not sure that, there's a ton of resistance on that point at all. But until we have more information, that is what we are going to ask to continue. As relates to parenting time, typically we defer to the LGAL, but as far as the department is concerned, the risk of harm relating to parenting time is more of that emotional and psychological harm. And again, we understand this could be premature, but with the request for termination of parental rights, MCL 712A.19D3 subsection 4, I believe, allows us to make that suspension of parenting time, especially because if there is any criminal, we know that there will be criminal charges coming, and whenever that is authorized, there may be additional restrictions with contact for children under 18, which is customary in these cases. And to take that time away may be more detrimental. Again, we would ask for the LGA's input on that point. The children do have a non-respondent parent that they can reside with. It sounds like Mr. Neffler has taken the steps to adequately safeguard the oldest child in this case as well by permitting him to be with a family friend. So we would just ask that these orders continue until the trial is resolved. Thank you.
Comments, Ms. Berger?
Thank you, Your Honor. We're asking for a finding today that probable cause does not exist to continue operating under this petition. I do believe that it's premature. There are a lot of questions that are unanswered at this point, and realistically, all we have is a disclosure made in one day to 2 separate individuals. I don't think that it's been substantiated enough in order to move forward with such a drastic move or petition like that we have so far in front of us. The child has been safety planned out of the home. Mom has been safety planned out of the home. we're asking that if you do find that probable cause does exist to continue, that we keep everything the same, that we keep parenting time the same, that if and when criminal charges come, then we can readdress that if needed. But these children are all very close with their mother and with their father, and they're going from a 2-parent household to a 1-parent household almost immediately. It's very difficult for them. It's difficult for the children and for the current caregiver who is father. So I'm asking that mother allowed to be continued to have that supervised contact and to help with the children. And we can keep the no contact in order with the oldest child. But again, Your Honor, if you do find that probable cause does exist, I would ask for an order for discovery with allowing plenty of time for the trial to be set. I would ask for a trauma assessment of the child and a psychological evaluation of the child. This is an older child. He's been in this system since I believe 3 years old. And unfortunately, he knows what to say and when to say it to get out of a home that he doesn't want to be in any longer. So at this time, Your Honor, that's what I'm asking for. I do believe that this petition is premature. And if you do find that you don't agree with that, I am asking for those specific things to be ordered. That way we can adequately prepare a defense. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith, any comments, recommendations?
Your Honor, I think there is obviously enough evidence to authorize the petition. I think the record is more than sufficient at this stage of the proceedings. Certainly the adjudicative phase presents different issues, but at this stage there is sufficient evidence. As far as parenting time goes, I have spoken now. Noah would like to have his mother return to the home. He, of course, indicated he's not suffered any trauma and he misses his mother and wishes she could be back in the home. And I told him I would make certain the court was aware of his feelings in that regard. Dale would like to return to the home. He indicated he and his father have had some meeting after the initiation of these proceedings where they kind of had some sort of reconciliation or whatever, but as he would feel safe back in the home again. But I realized that presents particular problems because of contact between the mother. But I told him again I would make his request known to the court. He is, however, happy and secure where he's at right now, so his present placement doesn't present any issues. I think probably the best thing at this point, and again, I'm going to presume that there may be trauma assessments done and things like that, that it might be best for a situation that we have some professional input before we consider what kind of additional contact he might have with his adoptive home. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
And Mr. Smith, do you have a recommendation or any comments as it relates to the other 2 children?
No, Your Honor, I don't. I didn't contact those other 2 children. They don't seem to be involved in these proceedings, and I didn't want to further traumatize them, the natural children, because there just didn't seem to be any reason to. So I have not had any contact with those 2 children.
Okay, Mr. Smith, well, they're named in the petition and there's a request to terminate the parental rights of their mother and for purposes of visitation. In the meantime, given that the department is asking to suspend her visitation entirely, I think it is very important that you visit with all 4 children so that you can be informed as far as your recommendations go on all those children. I respect and appreciate that you might not want to talk with them, but I'm sure they're already aware that many changes in their household have occurred, especially since mom is already out of the household. And it's important for me to have their voices heard as well. So,
I will.
Thank you. All right. Well, the court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's preliminary hearing. I've reviewed the petition. I have listened to the testimony of Mr. Macy. Certainly the rules of evidence don't apply to this particular hearing, and the allegations do appear to have been at least preliminarily reliable, as Mr. Macy testified to, as well as the supporting evidence that it does appear that the police investigation is moving forward, requesting charges. So the court does find that there is probable cause to authorize the petition. The circumstances of the family have arranged, the circumstances that have been arranged by the family do not justify the removal of any of the children. Certainly, they have a plan in place that safeguards against any further allegations as those that have been alleged in the petition. I also have to balance the fact that these are allegations against the fact that this parent has a very close and supportive relationship with all of these children. And so I will grant a request to allow the supervised parenting time with the younger 3 children to continue. I will release the children into the care of Jeremy Neffler under the arrangements that have been made by the family to safeguard against further allegations and harm, mental or physical, to the children. And we'll set a trial and a pretrial. In the meantime, I will include in the order that all records, all prior records as it relates to the oldest child should be released to Ms. Berger. It would seem that this child has an extensive amount of information available, and that may include information as it relates to prior trauma assessments, psychological assessments, etc. And that information is certainly relevant and important for her to review. And of course, those pieces of information should also be available to Mr. Smith and Ms. Thomas as necessary. And we'll count on Ms. Thomas to facilitate the release of those.
Judge, I was just gonna make a note that the agency has tried to look at his history, but it's sealed through the adoption record. So I'm not sure how that can, how we can move forward in that regard. I will take any guidance. And I don't know if that's something LGL can do, but I don't think that's something that we can do.
Have you looked to see if there's any legal authority under the circumstances?
Not yet, because that was just brought to my attention today. So again, I can do that research. I just don't know if you put it in order that I can comply with that.
All right. Well, what I can do is set us for a pretrial relatively soon to answer that question. And then, of course, since the children are released to a parent, then we have up to 6 months for purposes of our bench trial. I know it's always a consideration in these cases if there is or are criminal charges proceeding against a parent, and those are obviously relevant for our purposes as well. For reasons like avoiding requiring a child to testify more than one time, for example. So I'm going to set this trial out in September, unless there's any objections to that, and then we'll set a preliminary hearing a lot closer to it. I'm looking at Tuesday, September 3rd as our preliminary trial date, which I would ask all of you to be present for in person. Are y'all available Tuesday, September 3rd, commencing at, well, we can start at 9?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I can make it work.
Yes.
Okay, I've got it set for all day. Do you think it's gonna take more than one day? We don't know yet.
I based on the information I have, I don't foresee it taking more than one day. I don't know if Ms. Berger or Mr. Smith have a different opinion on that, but I think one day would be sufficient.
Well, and we can review that further. We'll set an initial pretrial, which I assume will have to be reset again before that trial date. So we'll continue to review that, but at least we have something on the books. I will also order that the initial trauma screenings completed the assessment and move ahead with assessments as recommended from the trauma screenings for all 4 children, please. And the psychological evaluation, I think that's appropriate and necessary for the oldest child. I'll ask the department to investigate the legal parentage as it relates to the 3rd child to understand that we have that established. And for pretrial, it looks like you may already be here Monday, June 10th. Would you like to join us a little bit early for this case, a pretrial on this case?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm not available that morning. I'll be down in Toledo, but I can connect anytime that afternoon.
All right, you may want to look at that then. I think you're potentially getting scheduled for that morning on a competing party matter. I have in the afternoon, a half an hour at 1:30, if you think that's enough time for the pretrial.
Should be. I think we're just discussing like discovery basically, right?
I would assume we'd be scheduling a second pretrial after that.
Yes. Would you like me to do that now?
Yeah, or at least I'm happy to start with the June 10th
All right,
one for a half hour.
okay, we'll do that. Mr. Smith, June 10th at 1:30 and Zoom is fine. And then, of course, our trial date, 9/3, beginning at 9 a.m. We would ask you to be here in person. Would those dates work for you?
Those dates work for me, Your Honor.
Very good. All right, I will issue the preliminary hearing order with the comments that I've included for today. And I think that's it for the issues that needed to be explored today. Is there anything else for the record, Ms. Thomas, or any questions?
No, Judge, thank you.
Ms. Berger?
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I'm good to go, Your Honor.